You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Yeah, well, I'm a Midwest girl, so I had to, represent the Midwest. That's good. But it was amazing being the top ranked American, especially, I kind of touched on the subject before, just being at a venue and being able to compete against that caliber of riders, and then to be able to hang with them every step of the way. And you're like, okay, yeah, I am sort of making it. I'm getting there. Like, some things are falling together, and it's like all that hard work you put in over time. So it's starting to pay off in those moments, and you just really get a chance to appreciate it in little moments like that and big moments. But the most special thing to me throughout the weekend were honestly like the morning flats and just looking around all the different riders at that venue and being like, wow, like this is awesome. Not only to have these riders in the Midwest in the United States, but to be on home turf and competing against them, and then to add like the little bit, you can say pressure, but it really was more of an excitement feeling for me, as an American trying to hold our own and aim for a podium finish.
Welcome to the Practical Horseman podcast, featuring conversations with respected riders, industry leaders, and horse care experts. The show is co-hosted by Practical Horseman editors, and our goal is to inform, educate, and inspire. I'm Julia Boutenhouse, and this week's episode is with leading international show jumper Hunter Holloway. Hailing from a family of equestrians, Hunter has been around horses her whole life, and she's been competing at the top of the sport since a young age. At just 12 years old, Hunter became the youngest ever to win a national Grand Prix. In 2016, she won the ASPCA Maclay Finals, the Washington International Equitation Championships, and the U25 Jumper Championship at the Pennsylvania National Horse Show. Hunter's success has continued into her professional career, with highlights including the CSI 5-star AON Cup at Spruce Meadows, the CSI 5-star $405,300 HITS Grand Prix at HITS Saugerties, and numerous national and international Grand Prix wins. She has also represented the United States on Nations Cup teams in Canada and Germany. One of her most recent and profound accomplishments, though, was her third-place finish aboard Pepito Conspita at the 2023 World Cup Finals in Omaha, Nebraska. This podium finish was especially meaningful to Hunter because of her Midwest roots. Born and raised in Topeka, Kansas, the CHI Health Center Omaha, where the finals were held, was considered a hometown venue for Hunter. During our conversation, Hunter shared just how special the 2023 finals were to her. She also speaks about her history and rise in the sport, her training philosophy, and how she believes her love of the horse has helped her to be so successful. Before we dive into the podcast with Hunter, I'd like to thank the sponsor of this week's episode, Boehringer Ingelheim, and share their message. Veterinarians, farriers, trainers, riders, grooms. Everyone plays a role keeping horses at peak performance. Boehringer Ingelheim is proud to provide the tools to help your team keep them healthy. Learn more at boehringer-ingelheim.com. Now, enjoy the episode with Hunter. Thank you so much, Hunter, for being with me today. I really appreciate you taking your time to talk to me.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to get going.
So I want to start right off the bat talking about the World Cup Finals, which was a crazy, amazing achievement for you. And not only that, it was also a hometown venue for you, which must have been just incredible. So can you go and tell us a little bit about what it was like to compete at World Cup Finals and at pretty much a home venue for you, and what it felt like to do so incredibly there? I mean, finishing in a podium position.
Yeah, it was such a surreal weekend, I'd say, as a whole. That was my second World Cup final, and I was super excited to get back to another final, mainly because it was a final event, but also because it was so close to home. That was really exciting to get to have so many friends, family, and just people I've grown up around and know so well all there to support me and cheer me on was just such an exciting feeling. Yeah, it just was amazing. There wasn't enough good things to say about the weekend.
And so your horse, Pepita Conspita, I mean, I had seen her quite a few times. I watched you guys show and stuff. You are an incredible pair. So can you tell us a little bit about her and what her performance felt like at World Cup finals?
Yeah, we always go in with the goal of winning. So as much as we wanted to win at World Cup finals, that's the dream, right? To be able to come away with a podium finish is just equally amazing at that, to be amongst riders of that caliber. That's the goal and where we want to stay competing at, and to have a horse that allows me to compete at that level and do so well too. I just have so much love for that horse. We purchased her as a 8-year-old, and she's now 12, and just being able to do so many big things with her, and it being her first big thing, and getting to do it with her and grow together as a pair over the years has been truly amazing, and something I've really enjoyed along the way with her.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. And so you said that was your second World Cup finals, of course. Had you shown in that venue before, having been pretty local to it?
Yes. As you said, it's kind of a hometown venue for us. And Lisa Roskins, the whole group that puts on that show, does just an amazing job. And I think it's been on my schedule almost every year. They've had a show there. One's so close to home, and I love supporting them, but also just the way they run the show and the whole organizing committee. They're just amazing people. I don't have enough good things to say about them. And to be able to do so well at an event they put on too was truly special.
And you were the highest placed American, and just watching you compete there, honestly, was really emotional, like really goosebumps. And just like this feeling of pride, like you being up there in a podium position and representing America. So how did it feel to be able to accomplish that on not only, your home turf, but for the United States, in the United States at a World Cup final?
Yeah, well, I'm a Midwest girl, so I had to, represent the Midwest. Good. But it was amazing being the top ranked American, especially, I kind of touched on the subject before, just being at a venue and being able to compete against that caliber of riders, and then to be able to hang with them every step of the way. And you're like, okay, yeah, I am sort of making it. I'm getting there. Like, some things are falling together, and it's like all that hard work you put in over time, so it's starting to pay off in those moments, and you just really get a chance to appreciate it in little moments like that and big moments. But the most special thing to me throughout the weekend were honestly like the morning flats, and just looking around all the different riders at that venue and being like, wow, like this is awesome. Not only to have these riders in the Midwest, in the United States, but to be on home turf and competing against them, and then to add like the little bit, you can say pressure, but it really was more of an excitement feeling for me. Mm-hmm. As an American trying to hold our own and aim for a podium finish.
You said you're familiar with that venue, but it's always difficult competing in an indoor arena. When you're preparing for an indoor, especially a final like that, how do you get ready to compete and jump a course that big and that demanding in such tight quarters?
Yeah, luckily Pepita is amazing inside. She's amazing outside too, but she's such a light and agile horse. She really handles well at venues like that, and that is an exceptionally narrow ring. I don't think you realize how narrow that ring is. I get there every year, and I'm just reminded, like, oh God, it's really small. But I don't think I'd say I do anything specific to prep for an event like an indoor event. I know mainly because I know that horse well. It's not like she's a young horse. She's seasoned at this point. She's seen all the things, and she kind of has her own system, and we just keep it that way for her. But if I was getting a young horse ready for an indoor, I definitely try and just school them in smaller quarters where they know they're going to be kind of always jumping into a wall. And I wouldn't make it hard for them, but I would just get them used to that feeling where you're pretty much always going into a wall, and then the next thing's coming up really quick.
And when you're walking your course in an arena like that and you're measuring out your strides, counting your strides, what is your method with that? Like, do you just, count the strides between the lines, or do you really measure like even around the corners and stuff to make sure that you're hitting your mark where you need to be in the arena?
wouldn't say I walk around corners unless it's like a jump off turn, then I will.
Right.
But in an arena like that, yeah, everything does end up being related, even around the turn. I'm not really a rider that likes to be so committed through a turn like that. It's at least in the first round. In the jump off, I would walk an inside track and find the most direct or least amount of strides I can do. But I'd say I walk my turns of every little inch of those courses. And I definitely walk the lines and have a good idea of a plan there. But I more think in terms of turns, I'm going to land, rebalance, or go forward. Whatever I think I need for that turn in the next jump, I'm more land and have that in my head versus a number on a turn. I do have to say I'm not a rider that is so committed to numbers, at least on that horse, because she can vary a little bit in terms of if I'm going to add or leave out or add or do the stride. I apologize. Add or do the stride. So it can vary, and I like to have an idea in my head, but I don't get super committed to a number that I have to do.
Right. Okay. And so you said you got her when she was 8. She's 12 years old now. And like you mentioned, she's an adjustable horse. Like, you can open up her stride, you can shorten her to add if you need to. So what do you work on in her training that helps with that adjustability?
At this point, we keep it simple, very simple for her. Mainly in her flat work, I think that horse hardly ever jumps. But early on, it was just a lot of lengthening and shortening and really, really basic flat work. She has got a bit of a sensitive mouth. I'd say she's always been a rather adjustable horse. She's always been a little finicky in the mouth. And over time, we've just found that it's easier to keep it simple for her. So rather than make anything complicated, we just keep her in a snaffle and keep her happy. And I learned to deal with a little bit of the brattiness in the bridle because that just seems to be how she jumps best. And the goal for me and my team is whenever we're bringing a horse along is I like to try and have them as simple as tack as possible. So that's kind of always in the back of my mind when I'm bringing along the horse is I do like to keep it simple. I like to try and get them broken riding well enough on the flat that then they can eventually jump in a snaffle or at least a less complicated bit.
Right. Would you consider her a spicy mare? Because she can look like it a little bit when you're jumping around. I mean, she looks so fiery. Like she's just, she gets her sights on a jump and she goes for it.
She is the queen and she knows it. Even walking down the barn, she's just like, yep, this is my barn. But definitely spicy, definitely knows her job and definitely wants to win. I mean, I don't think I've met or been on a horse that's as sensitive to environment energy as that horse is, and she definitely knows when it's a big moment and when it matters. And I'd say like just in terms of a first round versus a jump off, I mean she just grows off that environment and the crowd, and she feels the energy, and you just know, you're like, oh wow, this horse knows. She knows these moments and she wants to win just as bad as I do. So I'd say she's ultra competitive in that aspect.
Well, you guys are an amazing team and you're so fun to watch. And I want to get into you a little bit just so I can get to know your background some more. So going all the way back, how did you get interested in horses and riding when you were younger?
I was lucky enough to be born into one of those horse crazy families.
Yeah.
My mom was a trainer training out of Kansas. And before my mom's mom, my grandmother, she also rode horses her whole entire life pretty much. Not as competitively as my mom did. My mom still rides to this day, and she rode up to Grand Prix level. Yeah. And you might see her back in the Grand Prix ring at some point. Who knows? But she's did an amazing job, I think, during my junior years at really helping me get my career started and putting me in the right places in front of the right people. And honestly, just having guidance like that is the biggest thing when you're coming up as a junior and learning how to ride. To have someone that kind of knows the ins and outs of the business was a huge help. And she always made sure to do her best and have me in the right place at the right time.
And speaking of actually, your junior years and coming up through the ranks and, getting, growing into yourself as a rider, a lot of that was because you had a huge focus in equitation. You won the Maclay and the Washington. So how do you think that your background in the equitation has helped your career as such a successful jumper rider now?
Yeah, it's actually funny you bringing that up because yes, I did love the equitation and I had a very very good success in the equitation ring. But I actually had done Grand Prix before I even started doing equitation. I started doing equitation because my mom had a sale horse that came in that was an equitation horse, and I showed it and I was like, oh, I kind of like this. This is kind of fun. And then everyone had been saying, you need to get her into the equitation ring. You need to get her in the equitation ring. And at that time in my mom's career and mine, the equitation wasn't as important in our view, And then it was like, okay, yeah, we'll get on that. And then I just kind of fell in love with it and loved how detailed it was and how much focus was on correct riding and position, and fell in love with it as well. And then started doing it more and more and more. And then we met Don Stewart, and he became my kind of main trainer in terms of equitation ring. And he's an amazing man and trainer, and that whole system was great for me. And I learned so much from him, and it just kind of took off from there.
And so when you aged out as a junior and you made the decision to become a professional, of course, did you know from, when you were a junior that was something that you wanted to do immediately?
I think I knew from when I was like 6 years old. But I was a total barn rat. I mean, I grew up in a barn. The ongoing joke in my family is like I fell off. My mom fell off the day before I was born. And that's what's wrong with me, and that's why I'm so horse crazy. But yeah, like, as a kid, I was horse obsessed totally. Never really left the barn, and knew from a very young age that I wanted to ride professionally. I think there was a little bit of consideration on whether to ride for school for a little bit of a period, just because getting an education at a college level probably would have been a very good thing for me. But I was just felt that there were certain opportunities I didn't want to miss out on, and I'm sure they hopefully would have still been there. But for me, I just really felt a pull towards staying in the horse world and didn't want to take the 4 years out of my career. I wanted to stay grinding away at it and try and reach some of the bigger goals that I have.
You had your eyes on the prize and you went after it, and you've certainly achieved it.
I've been trying. We've been working hard at it, that's for sure.
So when you are competing now, I'd like to talk a little bit about winning and losing, because, this sport, it's so unpredictable. Horses are unpredictable as much as we love them. Things don't always go the way that we want. So if you're in a situation where you maybe didn't win a class you wanted to win, or you're just kind of in a slump, not winning as much as you might like, how is that something that you deal with?
Those moments are brutal. And let me tell you, they get a little easier in terms of how to handle them, but they aren't ever any less frustrating.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people probably forgot this, but I was second at McClay finals to Tori Colvin. Then the following year, I went off course at McClay finals.
Oh.
And then it was my last year I actually won McClay finals. So talk about like going in as kind of a favorite, at least someone that had a pretty good shot, right? At least a top 3, top 5 finish, and then to just blow it like that. And that wasn't even horse related. So I think that experience, although it was terrible and I hated every minute of it, it really taught me how to handle moments just of true, I was totally distraught. I totally let myself down more than anything and let my whole entire team down. So it was, it sucked it happened, but we know we move on from those moments. We grow from them, and to learn a lesson from it, and then see what you can take away and learn on it. And then to grow as a person from that, emotionally, as an individual, intellectually, what can I take away and do better next time to be able to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah, absolutely. I hear that from a lot of riders that I talk to for the podcast. Just as as distressing or as disappointing as it may be, you kind of have to find a little kernel in there and learn from it and make yourself better for it.
Yeah, it teaches you to be a stronger person, honestly. Like, yeah, it sucks, but you grow from it.
Yeah. So, but then when you do win, can you tell us about some of your most favorable successes in your career so far? I mean, we've already talked, of course, about the equitation and then the World Cup finals, but you've had a crazy amount of success and you're still so young. So, I mean, I'm sure there's tons ahead of you, but so far, could you name a couple of your favorites?
Yeah, I definitely World Cup finals is the, that's the ultimate favorite at the moment. I just it's the icing on the cherry on top, I guess,
Yeah.
for me right now. And it's the freshest in my memory too, is another part of it. But other special ones was my first 5-star win in Spruce Meadows. That was a really big win to me. My first 5-star Grand Prix win last year was very special with Pepita and the team I had with me there. My first Grand Prix win was really special because I had my whole family, or most of my family was there. And obviously the Washington was great. That was my first big final win, and my grandmother got to be there, and Dawn and everything. So there's been a lot of memorable ones, and I'd say it makes a lot of them so special. Like, yes, it's great to win big classes, but the most special ones have been the team that's been there with me, whether it's been family or just the team of people, and really getting to thought afterwards, like being like, okay, this is what we worked so hard and so much of this effort and time has been put into for this moment. You just kind of get to sit and reflect on that with everyone that's been grinding it out every day with us.
Mm-hmm. Your team is so important to have a good support system behind you. They do, and they sacrifice and do so much for us as riders.
Absolutely.
And when you are at a big show like a 5-star or a final or, anything that, you would chalk up to being like a really big moment for you, do you get nervous in those moments? And if you do, how do you handle your nerves?
Yes. I was just talking about this the other day, actually, to a younger girl that rides with me. And I was kind of trying to explain to her that, that your nerves will always be there. It doesn't matter whether it's your first meter 10 or your first meter 40. It's always kind of the same feeling. Even for me now, whether it's, a national Grand Prix or a 5-star FEI Grand Prix, the nerves for me are always there. And it might be the first time we're doing a bigger class. So those nerves are there again. And it's not a different feeling, but it's your experience and learning how to handle the feeling and how to make that feeling work for you. So you have to kind of be put in that situation enough times that you learn how to handle those nerves and make them work for you instead of against you.
Right.
And, I always tell people that ride with me, and something that I always work on and think about for myself is to control the controllables. So there's so many things you can't control. So you've got to kind of just, let those go and be okay with those. But you can control yourself. You can control how you look, how you present yourself, being on time, the cleanliness of your tack, all these little details that you may overlook. But those are things that kind of I do that comfort me, just in the feeling that I know I'm as prepared as I can be for that event in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, my next question was going to be if you had any kind of like routine or superstitions before a class, because a lot of riders do. They have like you said, a little piece of tack or a show shirt or something like that. So do you have anything like that?
I wouldn't say I have any super big superstitions per se. I'd say this is kind of a little bit of a funny one, but my boyfriend and I would go to the shows a lot together now. I'm pretty much always working together. And always for Grand Prix Day, he puts on his black cowboy hat. And at this point, it's just a bit of a habit, and I expect to see it. I think at this point it is too. I wouldn't say it always works, but black cowboy hat and black shirt, those two things, but they're not even related to me. It's just something he does, but now I kind of look for it and expect to see it. Like, it kind of somehow in my mind correlates with the Grand Prix.
Gives you a little bit of comfort, right?
Yeah.
Just something that's consistent. That's always there for you to take a look at. So I want to get a little bit into your training now, like when you're home. I know we talked a little bit about Pepita Conspita and her training. But as far as, her and then all of your other mounts, when you're at home and, your schooling, training, do you have any kind of philosophy that you like to follow or, like a thought process that at home when you're schooling you follow?
Yeah, I really do not like overjumping my horses. I try to avoid that all costs.
Yeah.
We don't jump much, actually. We do a lot of little like cavalettis or pulls. But I bet most of my horses, once they get to around that 140 height range that they're consistently competing at, they definitely jump less than once a week at home. Like if they're home for 2 weeks, they'll jump one time.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I try and get all my work done on the flat and over the poles, and the jumping side of things is just a little reminder. Or if they have something that they maybe need to work on in their form, we'll address it. But I wouldn't say I train on them at the jumps. It's more on the flat, and we work on really getting rideability in terms of forward to collected to turning, and getting them real soft and supple. And I expect my horses to be respectful of me, and I'm respectful of them. I do not like pushy horses at all, whether it's on the ground or on, I think there should be mutual respect between horse and rider.
Mm-hmm.
I respect them and love them, and they allow us to do amazing things and give so much. But I think when you get horses that get real pushy on the ground, it honestly ends up being a bit of a safety issue.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Is there anything that you do on the ground, like as far as groundwork, if you did have a little bit of a pushy horse to help them work out of that?
Yeah, I definitely big on boundaries, as this kind of was saying. I have my bubble and they have theirs. It doesn't mean I don't go cuddle my horses and love on them, because I do, but usually it's not in the aisleway. It's in the stall at the night check. I'll come and give them a treat and cuddle with them and have a little moment together. I don't love giving treats in the aisleway or out of hands. I think that kind of just creates a bit of nipping. I do go in their stall and give them treats, but in their feed bucket at night, and I'll cuddle with them and love on them. So that's something in my barn that I just try and incorporate a little bit. And then in terms of groundwork, yeah, Dylan, my boyfriend, does most of that. I've learned some of it over the years and say I'm okay at it. I'd say he's the one that was really quite good on the groundwork side of things and can really get a lot done mentally and physically for horse on the ground without a lot of stress. I mean, all of it's at the walk, and it's very easy on them. And it's just, asking them to get the hind end, come around, and go forward again. And very simple, basic things that help them get respectful of you. And then actually a lot of it correlates to when you're riding them too, and makes for a happier horse and rider. Happy horse, happy life.
Yeah, definitely. And when you're at home, do you have a favorite exercise on the flat or say over cavalettis that you have in your ring like all the time that you love to exercise your horses over?
Wow, that's a good question. I'd say I kind of go in phases in terms of, like, I will have kind of my repertoire of exercises for pulls and so forth that my horses know and they honestly get really good at. And then once it gets easy, it's almost a little boring. And then I'll come up with a new one and I'm like, oh, wait, it's kind of hard for this horse. Oh, wait, there's our missing piece. That's why we're not shortening in the ring as well as we need to, or lengthening. So it's more, I wouldn't say a specific favorite one. I'd say my favorite one is usually wherever I can find is working the best for me at that moment. But usually that also correlates with where my horses are at and their training. If one has a little hole that needs a little work on it, then that just becomes a favorite exercise for a week or two while we work through that problem.
Right. Do you ever find, especially with young horses, that there's one aspect of training that is more difficult for more than not? Like, say, changes or shortening and lengthening?
I have one horse that struggles a little bit in terms of staying around as she shortens. I have another one that struggles a little bit staying balanced through the turn. I have another one that environment changes. She's still getting relaxed and working on staying relaxed with an environment change.
Right.
So I think that honestly, just horses are individuals and it varies with each one. I wouldn't say there's a problem I encounter more often than not. I think that that's huge in just getting to know each one and see what they kind of need from us to comfort them, is a big thing, and just being aware of they're individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have a few more questions for you here before we wrap up. The first one being, and I get that this is a little bit of a difficult question from some riders that I talk to, but why do you think that you have been so successful so far in your career?
I'm beyond so horse obsessed. I don't think I can't vacation well. I can't leave the barn well. Like I I don't take space away from the barn well. Like it mentally gives me a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
I think is a big part of it. So I think the amount of time I spend around horses, with horses, on horses, very hard for me to go a day, let alone a week. Last time, actually, we were on vacation. I left vacation early and went and tried horses. We were in Europe already. And on day 2, I think I had booked a plane ticket to Holland to try horses.
Hey, if you're there anyway, right?
I know, we're already here. We're already across the pond. Might as well make it a useful trip instead of a vacation. Who needs those? But I also think the people that I've been lucky enough to have in my life and have been able to surround myself with, I've played a big part. I can't emphasize enough about having a good, solid team. Even from when I was a junior till now, they've been amazing, and I've been very lucky to come across people I've come across. And to add to this is my mom was a professional when I was younger, so she really was able to give me a big leg up in terms of knowing the business, knowing the nuances of the barn. And she always had me with the right horses too. I was always very well mounted. I definitely rode difficult ones, don't get me wrong. I had plenty of those, but I always had at least one good one that kept me confident and made it where I was able to successfully help the troubled horses or harder ones and create better horses out of them, because that good horse was teaching me so much too, at the same time. I was learning on that one and getting to put what I was learning into the more difficult ones and helping them grow and helping them get confident again, or whatever their little issue was at the time.
Yeah.
But that just comes from riding a variety of horses, the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. I think it's something we all experience. You have to do the troubling ones or the difficult ones. They make you a better rider in the long run.
Absolutely. But then you can't do it without the good horse, because as a rider, there's nothing worse than when you lose your confidence, and especially when a kid loses their confidence. You don't want to see that happen to anyone, let alone a kid or an older adult. Mentally, that kind of takes them out of the game. So it's really important that they can stay confident, happy, and remembering why they love horses and do it in the first place. That good horse is really invaluable in that moment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said. What do you think is the hardest part of this sport for you? I get a lot of different answers. It could be emotionally, physically, financially, but I think, this is a difficult sport, and I think that everyone has something about it that's difficult. So I'm wondering if you find that there is one part for you.
I kind of think it runs in waves for me in terms of my business. You kind of have a lot of highs and lows doing what we do. I love every bit of it, but it, financially is very draining. But you also have your really good months too, where, okay, I got a horse sold and I own part of it, and I'm, yay, got a little money in the bank now finally. But then that money goes and gets spent quickly. So that might have been a really good month, but now all of a sudden you're down again and working hard. Never stop working hard, but
it's a cycle of owning and riding horses.
Yeah, then it kind of bites you in the butt on the other end of it. And horse management, when you have top horses, is a huge part of it too, and how to keep them. Like for me, okay, I need a show to get prize money, but I can't and don't and won't overshow my good horses. So yeah, we need the prize money, but I'm not gonna, if it's not right for them, it's not right for them, and you got to do what's best for them. So that part of it, managing them and their schedules and keeping them at the top of their game. The financial side, the family side, making sure you have enough time for family at some point in there is hard, because it's such a big time commitment always. And, we're just stuck at the barn a lot. But, I love what I do and love horses, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And looking back at your younger self, is there any piece of advice that you would give her?
That's a tough one, too. You're full of good ones. Just probably it's all going to be okay. It's not the end of the world. That loss at that moment, you move on from it, you grow from it. It's not, people are going to forget. The amount of people that forgot that I've gone off course of a clay finals is comical, because I thought it was something that no one ever forgot.
Yeah, now, you think it's the end of the world in the moment.
Yeah, now I say that and no one hardly remembers. And I'm like, okay, well, now I can bring it up because I think it's funny now. At this point, I can look back and laugh at it. But I never in a million years, people would tell me all the time, well, you're going to look back at this and be able to laugh at it one day. And I just thought for sure they were crazy. Absolutely not. Like, I would look at them as if they said the worst thing ever, because how could anyone ever laugh at that? But
Yeah.
now I can look back and laugh at it, and you can see a little bit of the wisdom they were trying to impart on me there in those moments.
Yeah, I mean, especially that age, like being a teenager in the equitation, it's stressful enough, and then something like that happens, and people tell you it's okay, you like you said, you'll laugh about it, and you're like, what do you mean? How could I possibly laugh about this, no matter how much time has passed? But yeah, in the long run, eventually you can look back and realize that as stressful as it was, as heartbreaking as it was in the moment, you move on and everything is okay in the long run.
It's all going to be okay. And you will be able to count one day, because I could not count for the longest time. Oh, I struggled with how to count.
How did you finally learn? Did you find a trick for yourself that worked it out?
Oh my gosh, I think I just, yes and no. But Dawn was getting so frustrated at me. It's so funny there for a little bit, because we'd be walking, of course, just like at a normal show, nothing fancy. And someone would come up to me and ask me what the numbers are. And he'd be like, oh, don't ask her if she can't count over 5. Oh, it was like, it was so hard for me to figure out. But for me, what ended up working best actually was counting backwards. Really helped me. Otherwise, I would just keep counting. But a harder part for me also was I grew up doing the jumpers first. So I was literally doing Grand Prix before I could actually count like a bending line, which is crazy. But I rode pretty much all off feel. There was no kind of counting or method. I mean, there was a method to it, but it wasn't like as precise as you would be in an equitation with the numbers. Yeah. So I would just ride my horse's balance at all times. So an equitation ring, when you have some of those flatter lines, those lines that get real long, which I think they've honestly, for a while, they went on a phase where everything was really long. And I think they've toned that down a little bit. So it's not as bad as it was for a minute. But when those lines were getting so crazy long, I was like, no way. I'm just going to add this in and make sure my horse gives a good jump. Yeah. So you would know I was adding, and it would look perfect. And then I would, lose a bigger class or a class because I did a perfect 9 instead of a perfect 8. So learning that the flat distance, I just had to get used to, allowing myself to get there at that distance, and not always just riding off my feel, but I needed to be able to count and ride with feel, not just one or the other. And then what really did it for me, though, was counting backwards. I land and count backwards in each line, and just making myself do it every day until it became automatic was also the other part of that.
I think it would be comforting for our audience to hear that, because I think a lot of people struggle with line counting. So to hear that someone of your caliber had a point where she struggled with it is definitely very relatable.
Oh, yeah. Big struggle with it. My mom looked at me one day and she's like, can you just make a new mistake? Quit making the same mistake. Make a mistake, I don't care, but it needs to be a new mistake. No more issues with numbers, please.
Just last question. What's next for you? What's on your radar? I know you mentioned earlier you're going to New York next.
Yep. Go there for one national week and 4-star week. So that'll be fun. And I have a lot of really interesting 8-year-olds I'm getting to kind of focus on and bring up right now as the big guys take a little downtime. Nice. So they're having a little rest, and I'm getting to see what the young ones are all about and see what they're made of.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me again. This is an awesome conversation.
Of course. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode with Hunter Holloway. And a big thank you to the sponsor of this week's episode, Boehringer Ingelheim. Learn more at boehringer-ingelheim.com. You can subscribe to the Practical Horseman podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen. While you're there, please rate and review the show. Also, tune into our mini-sode series, The FOD Pod, where you'll hear audio lessons from our favorite Practical Horseman on-demand clips. At Practical Horseman On Demand, you can enjoy hundreds of how-to videos and get insider access to exclusive interviews and lectures, slow motion demonstrations, and step-by-step tutorials taught by top-level pros in the hunter, jumper, equitation, and eventing disciplines. When you tune into the FOD Pod, listen closely for a promo code for 15% off your Practical Horseman on-demand subscription. Thanks again for listening to this week's episode. I'm Julia Boughtonhouse, and you've been listening to the Practical Horseman Podcast.